What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Do It With Dan. And last time we left off on the 73 Camaro, we were stripping her down. Giggity. We also learned last time that things were not as clean as we'd hoped, and we'll get into that in today's video. So right now you're watching a repair that I did about a year or so ago, but I never found a spot for it in the videos. So here you go. Now this is a common rust area on the second gen Camaros. Water finds its way down into this area, and with no way out, it eats its way through. Now to knock out this patch, I created a cardboard template for each piece that I would need, then cut them out with my CNC machine and welded them in place. This was a pretty easy patch to make, and we're about to hop into the new stuff. But before we get started, we have a quick word from today's sponsor, which is Surfshark VPN. Now one of the biggest problems today is cybersecurity, and that's why VPNs are a great way to protect yourself online, which is exactly what Surfshark does. And no matter where you are, it's an excellent way to protect your privacy on the internet. As a matter of fact, you can be anywhere you want with a VPN. I mean, not physically, but digitally. One of the many cool things about VPN is your access to media from other locations. Did you know that there was different shows on different streaming platforms all around the world? For instance, did you know that Rick and Morty is on Netflix in Poland, along with 31 other countries? Just switch your computer over to the land of pierogies with a VPN, and boom, you're watching your favorite episodes of Friends, which is a show that I hate. But excluding TV shows and cheap airplane tickets, there are actually a ton of other really cool things that a VPN can offer. Surfshark VPN also encrypts your data. It prevents people from spying on you or gathering your personal information. And the best part is that Surfshark is giving you guys 83% off and 3 extra months for free. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's literally no risk in trying it out. All you gotta do is go to the description of my video, click on my link, surfshark.deal/withdan, and use my code WITHDAN, and you're good to go. It's that simple. And thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring today's video. Much appreciated. It helps me continue doing the things that I do and working on this weird platform, right? But now that's taken care of, let's get back to work. Alrighty, so let's get right into it. One of the biggest areas needing attention is this section above my firewall. Obviously, this is a big water spot with its shape and location. Water runs behind the hood and the fenders and sits right here, causing rust. It's actually one of the biggest locations on this car known for large rust pockets. So I started out by removing as much paint as I could to see how much of the metal we could save. Between using an angle grinder, some Ziz wheels, and a wire wheel, I was able to get a good gauge on how bad things were. It was definitely more than I was expecting, but nothing that we can't save. I drew my cut lines and began sectioning out the areas that were too far gone. Then I carefully, with an angle grinder and a Ziz wheel, cut out the rotten areas. Now for the smaller areas that I couldn't do with a cutoff wheel, I used this rotary tool that I received as a gift one year for Christmas. The metal was thin enough to grind away with relative ease, and I didn't have to worry about sending a cutting wheel into the supporting metal below it, which was actually in okay condition. Now after I cut out all the bad metal, it was time to make our repair patches. And this is where the boring part is, designing them in the computer. And the way I do things here works for me, but I recognize that there's probably better ways to do it. I just use Photoshop and a tape measure, and I create a 2D piece that is as close to the dimensions as possible. And if I'm unsure about a specific angle or a size, I usually leave a little bit of extra in my design. That way I can always remove material if it doesn't fit perfectly. But actually, after cutting them out, they fit perfectly, because I'm awesome. Alright, now this is where things started to get interesting for me. The pieces fit great, but the firewall itself isn't a flat piece. It has angles and bends that I need to replicate, which I've never done before. So I headed over to my vise and began shaping the metal with a hammer. For some reason, I couldn't find my body hammers, so I did most of the shaping with a claw hammer, which worked okay. But then after I found my body hammers, it made it way easier. Now I spent a good amount of time shaping and fitting the metal patches that I made, and once I was satisfied with the fit, I welded it in place, and I moved from edge to edge to avoid warping as much as possible and dispersing the heat, which I did the same for the remaining few holes that needed patching. and I'm pretty happy with this repair for right now. I've got all the seams and all the holes that were originally gone, all welded up and cleaned up pretty good. There's still some pockets from like differences in surfaces, you know, but I'm not really super worried about that. I think I'll end up coming in here with a little bit of filler and smoothing it out. But now it's time to work on the floors. I got all the seats and the carpet out, most of the weird rubbery styling insulation that there was. There's a bunch of this stuff, ripped it all out. I still have a little bit of cleaning up to do. A bunch of wires I need to figure out what I'm gonna do with. It's looking like the worst of it is these floor pans for the seats. It looks like the driver's side is not bad. However, the driver seat bucket back here, this has a bunch of holes in it. It's not exactly strong. This looks okay. There's a couple of holes back here, as well as back here, and then over here is probably the worst. Not really any holes in it as much as it is the whole thing is just rusty. I don't know the strength of it, I don't know the rigidity of it, I'm gonna do some testing with it. There's like a little bit of holing here, and I'm really nervous about this seam where it meets the, whatever this piece is. Outside of that, it looks like that's really all that we have to take care of at the moment. Let's do it. Now it was time for me to work on the floors. But since I was going to be doing a lot of grinding and welding, I wanted to remove anything that looked like it was going to be a fire hazard, which included the headliner, the rear trim covers, and all that other crap. I'm gonna take my angle grinder with a wire wheel and go over all of this, and whatever gets knocked out is what we gotta replace. And same for over here. As you can see, there's some big hole there. And these are drainage holes. I think what I'm actually gonna end up probably doing is that this does feel pretty bad. So I'm probably gonna end up replacing this entire section, right? I might just try to follow this seam. But that means I gotta use my bead roller because I can't just cut like a square. I mean, I can. There's not anything wrong with it technically. But this is the seat pans, so I wanna make sure that I do it right. So I will probably end up having to crack out my bead roller. I do have one, but I'm using all 16 gauge steel. This is all stamped, not rolled. I don't know if my bead roller can handle 16 gauge, so we're gonna find out. I've also never done any bead rolling before, or actually, for the matter of fact, I haven't done any body repair like this before either. And I feel like this came out really good considering I've never done it. The before and after is one thing, but you can also see that it looks a hell of a lot like this side over here, and this side's fine, believe it or not. So yeah, using the bead roller is something I haven't done before, so you guys are gonna watch me learn a new skill. Alright, so I went through the passenger side. The passenger looks like it's gonna be fine. There's not really any pitting, there's definitely no holes. Passenger side looks good. I mean, the passenger floorboard, on the other hand, looks a little bit more rough. We might have to replace some of that. The driver's side is a little bit worse off than I'd like. I was really hoping that the corrosion stopped here, but it looks like it even you got major pitting on this curve here, so we can't have any of that. This whole line is good, this meets good, this meets good, this meets good, but then it starts to get spotty here. So I think I'm gonna do an inlay. I'll probably cut a line that goes kind of all the way around. I'll tack weld it, spot weld it, however you wanna call it, along here. Then I'll create lips that fold against this, and then tack it against that. And then that should be, I hope, plenty strong. Now it's back over to the CNC machine to cut out the first floor pan. This was actually something that I was nervous about tackling. Pretty much everyone that I talked to told me just to buy reproduction stamped floor pans, which is probably the smarter option. But you know me, I love learning a new skill, and this was something that I've been wanting to learn for a few years now. Next, I needed to bend the lips so they fit in the floor the way I'd like them to. I should have probably cracked out the sheet metal break I made a year or so ago, but it was definitely overkill for something this small. And I wouldn't have been able to get the small bends that I really needed anyways, so I just sandwiched the piece between a board and my workbench and bent them with a rubber mallet. I'd say it easily just as effective and even more lazy than normal, so it's really a win-win for me. And just as I suspected, my measurements were perfect and it fits exactly how it should. Smiley face. But that doesn't necessarily make the new floor pan strong. So we needed to head over to the bead roller and add some rolls. Now, since this was my first time on a bead roller, you'd expect me to test it on some scrap metal, right? Well, that's not how I roll. Get it? Okay, anyways. Naturally, I did my first ever bead rolls on the piece I just spent over an hour and a half designing and cutting. And honestly, not bad. The rolls are too deep, it was wandering all over the place in the roller, and they look like shit. But it does exactly what it's supposed to do. By adding these rolls in the metal, it increases the rigidity by preventing bending and warping. It's very simple, yet effective. But honestly, this one looks like shit, so I made a second one that looks a ton better. I'm much happier with it. Then it was time to cut out the old floor pan section and weld in the new one that I had just made. All I need to do is clean up the rust, adjust it with a hammer a little bit, and weld her in. I am extremely happy with this, and proud of learning a new skill. It will definitely come in handy in the future. This is where things started getting hairy. I started removing the seam sealer so I could work on the rear pans, but after literally hours of grinding, I was getting nowhere fast. Because of this, I've decided to take a different approach. But to do what I need to do, I need to strip the rest of the car down to its bare bones. And then that is where I found it. Alright, so I've come to an impasse, if you will. I went ahead and finished stripping the rest of the interior. It includes the steering column and the rest of the air conditioning system, the window, door trim, jam trim, because as I started kind of fucking around, the more I found out, if you will. There is more rust than I had anticipated, and the floors are, how do I say this? So they're covered in shit. There's a bunch of seam sealer sprayed on heavily, seam sealer, and the more I dug into that with the angle grinder, the more I realized that it wasn't gonna be able to get everything out, and it's a big suck process. There are a couple of methods, which would be burning it out. That would be to continue doing the scrape and pry and then angle grind and then burn, and I just don't think that is gonna get everything that I want to get, because the car still smells like old car no matter what, right? I think it's gonna behoove me, both time and money wise, to get the car, at least on the inside, blasted. I think that's going to be my next goal. I think that there are a couple of mobile options here in Atlanta, meaning that they will come to you and then they will blast the whatever you want. I'm gonna reach out to some companies and see what I can find out about doing this. Just the interior, that is what I think I'm going to have to do for the rest of this interior. Covered in old seam sealer, and it is gross. Furthering this, as I was taking off the jams, there's these weird covers that cover everything. There is so much rust and decay in the A-pillars that they cannot not be addressed, right? These are structural, they're important, they're rigid, which means that I will have to address these. Like I'm about pushing my thumb through one of my A-pillars right now because of how weak it is in a couple of spots. So that means that I'm probably gonna have to pull the windshield. I might as well go ahead and pull the rear glass out too, because I'm gonna be doing custom trunk stuff with the speakers and whatnot. So I'm just gonna go ahead and have the front and rear glass pulled. I don't know if I'm gonna do that myself. I'll probably just end up having a buddy of mine come over and help me do it. I just gotta get up underneath here. I have to get up underneath here and do these repairs. Not only is it not safe, it's not really like how I want my car to be. I'm gonna have to really man the fuck up on some things. Learning how to use the bead roller for the floor pans. I saved myself a bunch of money doing this between this and the frontward repair, but it takes a lot of time to do. Like doing these floor pans, these were a couple of days getting them done correctly and figuring out how to use the bead roller and getting them welded in, on top of however long it took me to do that front repair correctly. I think the order of operations are going to be something along these lines. Get the windshield and the rear glass pulled out, have a company blast the inside of the car. I don't want to do the outside. I'm not concerned about the outside. As long as the outside looks good, I don't care if it's got body filler. But I can kind of peek through on the inside of the trunk line and through here, through this side vent that's in the side of my car here. Does not look like there's any body filler or anything like that in the fenders. So I don't really give a fuck. They actually look great. On the rear of the car, they look awesome. I think it's just a handful of weak spots that are prone to leaking, like the floor pans. This is where water's gonna build up, right? If there's any water in the car, that's where it's gonna go. The AC unit is definitely gonna leak a little bit. It's an old car. And then these areas in the A-pillars where there are heavy water traffic and seals, whatnot, that makes sense to why those could get rusted out. The rest of it does not look bad. Gonna have to suck it up and do the blasting on the inside. There's no way economically, in order for the videos to keep coming, I have to make progress. So hopefully there won't be like 12 videos of me grinding on the inside of the car. I think the car is pretty much as gutted as it can be. It's more than I'd like to have done, because we're not super far off from the Fox body situation, right? Which I still have. I have also decided a couple things about the dashboard, the front of the car and the rear of the car. I will be making a custom fiberglass dashboard. I'm gonna mold it myself. I haven't really figured out how I'm gonna do that. I think that's gonna be a bit of a bitch to do, but can't have the windshield in here to do that. The way I wanna do it, it just doesn't make sense. And then I'm going to do a custom rear seat delete. It won't be anything crazy. It'll most likely be subwoofers, an audio system kind of deal, maybe a mount for like a gun, you know, like an AR-15 or something like that, something that I'm really into. That's more than likely gonna be it. Maybe some structural supports. I also will probably have to cut out the transmission tunnel to a certain point to accommodate a T56 You know, I don't know if it's going to fit perfectly in here because this used to be an automatic Turbo 400, I believe. Make a custom center console like I did the dually. That'd be real clean and easy. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, maybe a lot of bit overwhelmed. Turning out to be a lot more work than I wanted to be for this car, and that is okay. I know there's people out there who think I'm bitching. I'm not. I'm just explaining. Mistakes were made. I will put it as probably one of my biggest L's in the Do It With Dan channel was buying this car. Like, honestly, I should have just kept this car the way it is and then bought a roller. I did this in the most back-assward way possible. You have no idea. Or maybe you do. I'm definitely open to advice and ideas. I'm too committed now at this point to throw it all away. But that being said, that's where I'm gonna end the video right now. This is what I'm working on. This is where my efforts are going. There will be other videos in the meantime, like while I'm working on this stuff, moto vlogs, track stuff, etc. I appreciate your patience. You know, I'm working my ass off, I promise. That being said, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. You guys still here? The video's over. Go home. It's the end. I've got no more content for you guys. If you still haven't, you could leave a like, you know, maybe subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment for the algorithm, you know, that way more people see me and I continue to do what I get to do, you know, at the cost of nothing to you. It's free. It's totally free to leave a like. It costs you nothing other than, you know, half a second of your time. You could be doing it right now. You could scroll down and hit like, maybe hit the notification bell. I upload more regularly than you probably think. Tell me I'm pretty, you know, if you want to, but if you can't spare that, you know, if you just don't have it in you, I get it. I get it. And yeah. Okay. I'm gonna actually end the video now. Right now. All right, so I've come